Today we're looking at the book of Ephesians. It's actually the letter of the Apostle Paul to the church in Ephesus. Ephesus was, I think, originally a Greek city. No, it wasn't. It was actually in what is now Turkey, but it was in the area called Asia Minor. So Paul, in his many journeys, has been to this region, and now there's a church of believers there. And the year is about 40 AD, 60 AD, sometime around there. So, not really important to our discussion today. I just started looking at this map and getting interested. But anyway, what is important today is the message that Paul has sent as this letter to the church in Ephesus. And he says, what this letter is about the practical things that we can do each day as Christians, and the things that will come to life in our lives as believers. So the Christian, one way or another, finds himself or herself with the mission of continuing to work out what it means to be saved, and they continue to work out what the purposes of God are in their new life of faith. In Ephesians chapter 6, Paul says that those who are strong in the Lord actually exert their authority. They have victory over Satan in the great spiritual battle that we're all in. And as much as people don't pray enough, prayer is like a sword. I remember when I was in the position with Narelle, even though Narelle never believed in God, even though her crazy mother never believed in God, I believed in God, and that was enough. And I remember when we first had troubles, I prayed to God, and I said, Father, please come against this spirit of hostility that's at work against Narelle and I, and is at work in her mother. And the very next day, everything was calm. Even in that crazy situation, God said, okay, for now we'll make it calm for you so you can see that I am the living God. And everything was calm. The mother was relaxed. She didn't worry about us, which was very, very, very rare. It didn't happen without prayer. And Narelle even said, I told my mother that this is my relationship and it's really none of her business if I win or lose. That was the most sense Narelle would ever make in her life. After that, it all fell apart again, and then there was a reason for me to let the whole thing go. But anyway, prayer is extremely powerful and effective. And of course, when I lived with that very stingy gay man, because my whole family had rejected me, then it was there that God provided for me. I had dreamed that day or the day before about being in this large shopping center. I'd never been there in my life before, and it was like 2 stories, 2 levels from the inside, and you could see the glass balcony that went. It was a square inside, so it was like you'd be downstairs, you could look up and see the glass balconies of the upper level. And I had no food. The gay man said, oh, well, I'm going away now, enjoy. And there was no food there, and I paid my rent and I paid for food as well, and he didn't care. So I had nothing and no money left, and I thought, well, I'm just going to do what the Bible says, and I'm going to trust in God. And then the phone rang, and it was Hannah, and out of nowhere she was talking to me. And then when she heard that I was all alone, there was no food, she told her boyfriend, who was even more upset, and immediately said, we'll tell him to get dressed. If he's not dressed, we'll take him out to lunch, we'll buy him groceries. And you see, this is what God can do, that through the most unlikely of people, He can help us. So prayer is powerful and effective, but prayer is only one of our tools as we put on the whole armor of God and use the tools that God has given us to have a very righteous, a very power-filled life here and now. We don't have to wait to the end of the age or to go to heaven to feel the comfort, the security, and the power that God gives to us. Just as Jesus said when he prayed to God for all of us, he said, Lord, they're not of the world. They're no more a part of this world of sinners and trouble than I am. And Jesus says, I don't pray that you take them out of this world, God. Them, he means we believers, you and me. I don't pray that you take them out of this world, God, but I pray that you sustain them and you look after them as they go through this world. Now those words are true, because even when we are left alone and hungry by people who no more care about God than the rocks of the earth have more care of God, and even the rocks of the earth know God compared to this gay person I was living with. Even no matter our circumstances, God is able to provide through people we might not otherwise think would provide for us. And it's all part of the fact that as God's children, we do have blessings. We receive blessings and gifts to help us in our time of need right now, and also the kind of gifts and blessings that help us to be wise about who God is and wise about who we should be as well. Anyway, this brings us to Ephesians chapter 6, one of my favorite parts in the whole of the Bible. It's powerful, and it says this. I might say before we read it, no, I shouldn't do that, should I? When I say it says this, I should read it. Okay, here we go. Changing my bad habits. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10. Finally, so this is Paul about to wrap up his letter to his beloved church in Ephesus. Finally be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our real struggle is not against flesh and blood. It's not against other humans, as much as sometimes it might seem that way. Rather, our real fight is against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil that are in the heavenly realms. Now when Paul talks about heavenly realms, he's not talking about God's heavenly place only. He's talking about the unseen world that is surrounding ours and that interacts with our world. So Paul is saying that there are powerful forces of evil in the unseen realm. And just as we think of God as a spiritual being of immense presence, although he has no body, so too Paul says there are unseen beings around us who can interact with us and make trouble for us, who also don't have bodies. And in this way there's a likeness between the heavenly being God is and how these other beings are unseen as well. So Paul calls the whole of the unseen territory where these beings hang out, he calls it the unseen realm, the spiritual realm, the heavenly realm. Now, we read that rather quickly, those first two verses, so let's go back and look at them carefully. Ephesians 6 verse 10. Finally, be strong in your own muscular strength? No, be strong in the Lord, in our living union, in our connection with Christ. Just as our status has changed from orphans alienated from God, now we are children of God. We are part of God's family. And because of this, we can very really be strong in connection to God. And we can call on his mighty power. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power, Paul says right here, verse 10. Yes, our human effort always has limits, doesn't it? Like we can only run so fast, and then the bicycle goes faster than us. and we can only ride on the bicycle so fast, and then the car goes faster than us, and we can only go so fast in a car before the plane overtakes us, and so it goes on. So too, human effort is limited, but God's power goes on and on forever. So Paul is encouraging us to not just think of our own human power, but when it comes especially to overcoming the anxieties in this life, to overcoming religious enemies, including the muzzos. And I won't call them anything else. That's what they are. It almost sounds like a blowfly. Muzzo. Anyway, when it comes to answering our human enemies, our religious enemies, our economic enemies, the enemies that exist in the government, in the medical field, we are encouraged to come against them through prayer and through the power that is available to God and available to us through God. Verse 11. Put on the full armor of God. Being saved, being part of God's family again, after being abandoned out in the world of sin, and taking ourselves away from God into the world of sin, being in God's family is protection. It is spiritual protection. No longer are we who are really saved able to be deceived by Satan, and those who Satan stimulates to go forward in the world, including the muzzos and other blowflies like them.